guys? Welcome into the Southern Football Podcast. We are your hosts, Drew and Steve. There's not a whole lot going on in the way of football today, so we're just going to fill time the best we can. Right now, we've got a couple of, we had a big game earlier in the day. I ended up deciding the SEC Eastern Division champion with Florida taking down LSU 16-10. LSU actually had a chance to win the game going in with a touchdown at the end, but Ogeron, elected not to throw the ball for, 5 straight downs. Kind of puzzling decision-making there, but, such is Ogeron.
Yeah, and I guess the goal line stand comes on instead of running the ball at the middle on a toss play to the outside, which I think is even more troubling because especially the second half, mainly the fourth quarter, LSU didn't really seem to be able to have too much success running the football, so it's kind of puzzling, or at least to the outside of the perimeter on any of the stretch plays. So I'm kind of confused as to why, with the game on the line, you go, you know what, it's going to work this time.
Right, yeah. No, and LSU outplayed them pretty badly. But if I remember right, they gained about 400 some odd yards to Florida's 220. So it's just sort of puzzling. 260 something yards to LSU's 423. So again, I mean that's a case of the bad coaching, as they say.
Is this the real Ed Orgeron?
I think so. I mean that's if you remember his teams at Ole Miss.
Yeah, that's what I'm. Yeah,
he had a lot of talent there. I mean he had Dexter McCluster. Mike Wallace was on those teams. Patrick Willis, one of the better middle linebackers we can remember in recent history. So, yeah, I mean, he's going to, in a lot of cases, unfortunately, coach his teams out of victories. So that's just sort of what you get with a guy like that. He can get a lot of talent. They'll beat bad teams. But, when it comes down to meaningful games, meaningful wins, against, the Auburns, Alabamas, of the world, the Texas A&Ms, the teams that have, comparable talent level to theirs, they're just not going to get it done more times than not.
So we think that, I guess then if Orgeron were to get the head job over at LSU, are they just destined to spin their wheels 9-10 wins a year?
Yeah, I think so. If even that, I think it's more like an 8-win thing. You'll probably see more of what Les Miles did over his last 3 or 4 years at LSU, more so than what he did over his first 5.
So, hearkening back, from several weeks ago, LSU back in the hunt, looking for a head coach.
Yeah, I think so. There's all sorts of rumors out there, but I expect them to throw the bank at Tom Herman, at Houston. I have mixed feelings about him. Sort of, he sort of reminds me of Gus, in terms of his path to a big time head coaching job. He's had a lot of success at Houston. I mean, nobody denies that. He's going to win that conference, or probably win that conference, I guess, for the second year in a row. But I mean, there's no substance to make me believe that he can be big time successful at a Power 5 school.
So, potentially then, based on the news breaking this week, it looks like if that's the case, then Texas and LSU might get in a little bit of a bidding war this week.
Yeah, and if that's the case, LSU's shot. I mean, they just don't have the resources to compete financially with a place like Texas.
Right.
Of course, Charlie Strong's got a hefty buyout. It's around $12 million or so.
So, I guess then what happens if if you're LSU, you lose out to Texas with trying to go after Tom Herman. Assuming that that's their lead dog. I mean, who knows, behind closed doors, maybe they have somebody else they're looking at. But, is there anybody else really on the table right now that could, especially with Art Briles now coming out saying that he was did have knowledge of things or whatever, looking like he may not be as clean sheet as he would have led us to believe. I mean, where do you look if you're LSU?
There's going to be, there's some of the usual suspects. If it were me, a guy I would look long and hard at, and people remember him from his South Florida days when he was unceremonially dismissed. Jim Leavitt, he's the defensive coordinator at Colorado now. They have, I think it's the number 3 defense in the country, and he took South Florida to a top 5 BCS ranking, if I remember right, in 2007. So that's a guy I would look at. Otherwise you're just going to be looking at one up and comers or 2 a bunch of retread guys. Really.
Yeah. Best case if you don't get somebody like that. Like you mentioned, up and comers. Maybe you look out and get somebody who is coordinator in the NFL. No head coaching NFL jobs are open, and you come back to the college level or something.
Yeah. I mean, if you're going to go that route, I would look no further than Chip Kelly at San Francisco. I mean, I think he's not that he's in over his head. I think he's a really good coach, and if given time, could get it done. But I just don't. I mean, for one, I don't see the ownership there having the patience to wait on something like that.
Yeah, and the NFL's too big a business.
Right,
you got to be a here and now kind of guy. You're getting about 2 years in the NFL. You don't get it done in 2 years. You're hitting the curb.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, they just, it's not his fault they're not winning. They just don't have the players to win right now at San Francisco, and aren't going to for at least a couple more years.
Well, I do want to, we'll come back to the LSU game in a few minutes. Another interesting one to see earlier today. We had Ohio State,
yeah.
Michigan State. That's an interesting one. I mean, gosh, coming out, Michigan State going into the game 3-7,
yeah,
and ends up holding number 2 team in the country to 17 points, putting up 16, and almost winning the game.
Right. Yeah. I mean, with Michigan State struggles this year, man. I mean, it boils down to with Kirk Cousins and Connor Cook the last 4 or 5 years they've had really solid quarterback play. They just don't have it right now. I mean, that's the difference in. Getting to the college football playoffs and looking like a 3 and probably going to be a 3-9 team or 4-8 maybe.
So D'Antonio on the way out?
No, I don't think so. I think they'd be foolish to pull that trigger.
All right, fair enough.
I mean, but I will say he had a mind-numbingly stupid call at the end of the game. They're down 17-10, managed to score. You would think tie it up at 17, but rather than kick the extra point, he elects to go for 2. Just like I told you, inexplicably, with like 7 minutes left in the game. Which is confusing because if Ohio State's going to end up getting the ball back anyway, they would still only need a field goal to win. No, you're right. Or to take the lead back.
Yeah, so it's a kind of a baffling call, and you sit here and think, like, why not take the points, give yourself a chance to tie and go to overtime, or either, I hope your defense can come up with a miracle turnover on a short field or something to that effect.
Right, yeah. And it just didn't make any sense at all to me, man. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's just one of those things. I mean, nobody coaches every game perfect or anything like that, but it was really surprising to see that from D'Antonio.
Yeah, the only thing that's curious to me with D'Antonio up there is, is he going to be able to consistently compete for recruits with Harbaugh? That's really my only question.
Well, he never has, though. I mean, that's been his MO, is get diamonds in the rough. I mean, you go back and look, they've signed maybe, I mean, we can look at their recruiting rankings. They've signed maybe 3 4-star recruits the whole time he's been there. He's more of a money ball guy, sort of like what Dan Mullen does at Mississippi State, or tries to do. And I mean, you see that with Dan Mullen too. I mean, there's going to be rebuilding periods when you do things that way. But I mean, he's never been a guy that goes after 4 or 5 star recruits.
Sure.
You're not going to win, championships, not consistently anyway that way. But I mean, at some places that's what you're relegated to. I mean, that's just the best you can do, which is fine.
Well, we know earlier today, Florida, going back to kind of that Florida LSU game, we know Florida wrapped up the SEC East. Mm-hmm. Tennessee looks like they are going to get the job done against Missouri, potentially, even though they're only up 21-20 right now.
At halftime,
kind of back and forth, a little bit more surprising than even I would have thought. But, regardless, with the Florida win, the Gators are going to take the East this year after a troubling season for the Georgia Bulldogs. But, I think one thing that was interesting to me was before the game, just the scuffle that breaks out. The funny thing is, if you're watching the kind of the pregame on SEC Network, all of a sudden you see the panel of commentators like all turning, like, what on earth is going on? You got Leonard Fournette in a tracksuit, pushing and shoving with a Florida coach. I mean, it's just
and that is something that cannot be tolerated from a Florida coach. I mean, these guys are supposed to be adults, I mean, you can't get into a physical altercation with a 21-year-old. Just totally inexcusable in my opinion.
Well, yeah, and I mean, especially it's not even like it's your division rival or anything. I mean, it's
right,
not like
yeah. There's a lot of sour grapes about how that game ended up in Baton Rouge. Now, from Jeremy Foley, what he said was that that LSU, or I guess LSU had made it seem like they had made every accommodation available to Florida, all this other stuff, but Jeremy Foley was trying to get the game back in Gainesville one way or another, and he was told that LSU would not budge unless it ended up with them playing in Baton Rouge. So there's two sides to every story, I guess.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, like we said, that was really surprising. Another thing that's surprising is Indiana up 7-6 on Michigan right now in the third quarter. Boy, talk about throwing what do you fly in the ointment, as they say.
Yeah, no, I mean, boy, it'd be something to see the Wolverines go down 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah, I mean, after how they'd looked the first 9 games, I mean, that's I don't know, man. That's going to be interesting going into the Michigan Ohio State game for sure.
Yeah, that's going to be a a good way to finish up the year. In that conference, kind of see, excuse me, what ends up happening there. Another one that another kind of topic that I wanted to get your take on is the recent media developments with the comments towards LeBron James, and his posse, if you will.
I mean, I'll be honest with you. When I was in high school, me and my group of friends used to call ourselves the posse. And be like, hey, we're gonna, watch TV and play video games with the posse over here, stuff like that. Just this generation, and I sort of think LeBron James is sort of the poster boy for this generation of people, but they're just too sensitive, man. I mean, I didn't say anything inflammatory about what Phil Jackson said. If anything, it was meant to be condescending. Just sort of like they're a bunch of goobs that follow him around, and
but yeah, like you said, a bunch of crybabies.
That's exactly what.
Boo-hoo, turn off the butt.
Right. Well, and if that was his goal, then they're proving him right.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I think we've seen recently in in the last couple of weeks after this year's election that this country is filled with a bunch of crybabies. That regardless of whether your political views line up. Grow up. Seriously.
There are actually offices on college campuses that are dedicated to grief counseling over being distraught because of the election. Are you kidding me? Grow up, man. That's.
Jeez. Now that I look back on it, I think I really missed a golden opportunity in high school and college to kind of sit out of classes and stuff when a particular candidate went, oh my gosh. How am I going to react this day? Well, I don't know.
No, seriously, and what's going to happen when this happens in 4 years when those kids are in jobs?
Oh, well, that's the thing,
your
right?
Your boss isn't going to let you take a day off because...
moreover, it's... Okay, your parents lied to you. You're not a special snowflake.
Yeah.
Grow up.
Yeah.
Come on. Be an adult. If you're old enough to vote, you're old enough to be an adult and accept the fact that if you're voting, your candidate may not be the one that wins.
Yeah.
Regardless, whether you're Democrat, Republican, liberal, it doesn't matter what party you're in.
Yeah.
Just, seriously, like you said, what are you going to do? Go to work and cry? And, go to your boss and be like, I need to speak to somebody in HR. My candidate didn't win.
And then, where does that stop? Do we start taking days off because our favorite football team didn't win too?
Well, I hope not, because as an Alabama fan, I would never get a vacation. Excuse me.
But seriously, that's 10 years ago, I never would have thought we'd see this, and 10 years from now, we probably will be talking about this.
Oh God!
Oh, Bob called out today because the 49ers got beat. Seriously, or they didn't pick a player in the draft that he wanted.
Oh, jeez. Well, I feel bad for the state of Mississippi. They might as well go ahead and shut down on Mondays. Well, speaking of I guess where the future is headed, one thing that I was kind of following this week was, Tony Romo came out, gave a press conference, and everybody was praising him for this, this beautiful press conference speech he makes, conceding the job. And it's I don't know. I'm not saying that he wasn't gracious in handing it over. What I'm saying is it's I don't understand what the big deal is. Even when Tony Romo's healthy, by all accounts, Dak Prescott's doing more for that team than Romo has done.
Yeah, no, okay, this is interesting. Dak Prescott's won, they're 8-1. He's won 8 games in a row. You know how many times Tony Romo's won 8 games in a row?
I'm going to go with a big zero.
Zero times. That's not necessarily meant to be a knock on Romo. That's just, that's a credit to what Prescott's been able to do.
Well, and I know that like Romo has, I guess at this point, a relative similar point in Romo's career, he had the same number or he had more touchdown passes, but the thing that cripples the Cowboys when Romo is at the helm is he throws a lot of interceptions.
He does. For a lot of his career, that can be blamed on bad offensive line, skill players being banged up, stuff like that. So I do understand. I mean, it's sort of the perfect storm with Prescott.
He's had Jason Witten and Des Bryant.
He hadn't had Des Bryant his whole career, though.
No, but he's had other players like Miles Austin.
I know.
He's had. I'm not saying that he's had all pro guys around him. Right. I agree with you. And has the offensive line been an issue?
Yeah.
Absolutely, it has.
Until they started drafting him in the first round like 4 years ago.
But Dak Prescott's got the same offensive line relatively that, not that dissimilar.
Right. Well, I mean, to get a more fair look at what Tony Romo's capable of doing, look at him 2 years ago. The 1 year he was healthy and had the offensive line, he threw 32 touchdown passes to like 6 interceptions. So, just trying to be fair.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it's it's just interesting because there's always. Everything has its season. There's time for change. I mean, and Dak Prescott coming to the NFL as a 4th-round draft pick. I mean, an incredible value for the Cowboys. He's done a great job stepping into that role. And, honestly, if I'm the Cowboys and I'm Jerry Jones, I gotta be honest with you, man. I'm looking at other teams like, where quarterbacks like Sam Bradford are playing, and I'm looking at teams, and I am shopping Tony Romo around nobody's business.
I'm sure that's already started. Otherwise, we wouldn't have seen the press conference from Romo. That's just a guess, but
no, I think you're right on that.
Yeah. There's a couple of places I think he would be great at. One is like you mentioned, Minnesota. Of course, Minnesota's already given up. A first-round draft pick for Sam Bradford, which is going to be being another wash.
The dumbest decision ever.
I know, but they needed somebody right then. They were desperate, so I guess I can understand.
Similar offense. Yeah, it's just Sam Bradford has proven that one of two things is going to happen. He's either going to be hurt or he's going to suck.
Right. Another place is the Arizona Cardinals. It looks like Palmer sort of hit the wall there.
Sure.
He's a really good player, but I mean, it's done.
Might be a good situation, similar environment. He's playing in a dome, doesn't have any serious weather to contend with.
Another place is the New York Jets. I know that's cold weather up there, but they've got a much better skill position situation with Brandon Marshall and Eric Decker and Matt Forte up there than really than anywhere else as far as like a depth standpoint. They don't have a very good offensive line, which was again sort of his same problem in Dallas.
Right.
But they do have the skill players. Other than that, you're looking at a stopgap between him and probably a first-round draft pick this year. San Francisco's another possible place, but it wouldn't. I don't know.
So you're telling me that you don't think Colin Kaepernick is the future of the San Francisco 49ers?
I do not. I've seen enough post Harbaugh. Like I said, he looked great under Harbaugh, but so did lots of people that weren't really great.
Yeah.
I think this is if anybody had any doubts before, this has got to be Kaepernick's last ride.
Dude, I cannot wait for I hope that I hope with all you just hundreds of thousands of listeners to the show, I hope that excuse me, 5 years from now we're sitting here and I really hope that what we're actually doing is a show. I hope we spend an entire year doing a segment called "Where is Colin Kaepernick Now?" Yeah. Because I can only I really like this. I hate this guy so much, but I really hope that ESPN does some "Where Are They Now?" special and Kaepernick's in the Oakland suburbs, washing cars at an Anthony's car wash or something, just scrubbing windows.
Right. That's one thing I do know is we won't have to look very hard to find him. That guy loves the camera.
When you don't have, the people that don't have time to spend in front of the camera are the ones that are the good players who are studying and getting better and stuff like that. Clearly, Kaepernick has no interest in doing any of those things. So
that's what, and it's so amazing because if you go back to his, I guess it was his second year in the league because he didn't play any in his first year. But you go back and look at post game, pre game press conferences. When he first got the starting job, totally different guy. And I really don't know what changed between then and now. But this was a guy that almost effortlessly led San Francisco to their first Super Bowl in almost 20 years. And I don't know, man. And on any given Sunday or during a playoff game, you'd look and he'd be the best player on the field. I remember him running it was a playoff record for a quarterback, 210 yards at Lambeau. I just don't have an answer for what happened.
I think the problem is that Colin Kaepernick can't seem to figure out in his head if he's going to be a social activist or a football player.
Yeah.
And right now, I can tell you one thing: he damn sure ain't a football player.
Yeah, I know. And he's so, I mean, the stuff he says is so idiotic too, as relates to his social injustice stand or whatever you want to call it. But anyway,
well, I guess maybe we should let's close out with some fun SEC games coming up this week. I mean, we certainly want to take a second to wish everybody that's going to be traveling for the holidays safe travels. Hope everybody has a good Thanksgiving coming up this week. We really, as always, really do appreciate everybody listening in that takes a few minutes out of their day. But I tell you what I'm excited for, man. My favorite part about Thanksgiving is close-knit family getting together, some friends, family hanging out. We're going to eat a bunch, of course.
Yeah.
But drink a bunch. Have some good beer, some good wine, probably bust into some brown water. And then I am going to watch some amazing football games, I hope. There's going to be some NFL on. If you want to pull that up real quick, maybe give us a rundown of what NFL games are coming on. I know the first big SEC match of next weekend we're going to see is going to be LSU and Texas A&M on Thanksgiving Day on the 24th. So after everybody gets their gobble in, you can sit back and watch Coach Run take on the A&M Aggies. That game is in Arlington, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe it is, yeah.
So, I'm guessing after this week, we could very well see, number 20, 22, 23 versus, 21, 22, somewhere in that range. So should be a good matchup. I'm curious to see who the favorite's going to be. I'd have to imagine A&M might come out as a 1-point favorite, just having the home field advantage in that one. But that should be a fun one to watch going into a good weekend of some SEC football.
Oh, yeah. Of course, we got the Iron Bowl.
We've got the Iron Bowl on Saturday. On Friday, actually, we have excuse me.
Florida State. That's
Florida State in Tallahassee.
Okay.
So that should be a good one. I mean, I like that matchup this year. I think I don't know, maybe it's just me, and maybe it's me being a little bit, I guess, non-committal to either of those teams. But it seems like in recent years that game has been one of the teams has been a pretty heavy favorite. But I think this year they're going to both come in pretty even matchup.
They're about the same, I think, this year.
Should be a fun one to watch.
Yeah, which one of my favorite players in all of college football to watch is Dalvin Cook. Anybody that hasn't gotten a chance to see this guy running back for Florida State is an absolute beast with the ball in his hands, track speed. He reminds me of Reggie Bush. His running style, low to the ground. But let's see. Thanksgiving Day, we have got, of course, the Lions are playing. They get the Vikings in an early game, 11:30.
So 11:30 Central. That should be a fun one. That's in Detroit. Again, we've got two 5-4 teams. So that should be interesting. And then of course, we got to see the Dallas Cowboys on Thanksgiving. So again, talking about Dak Prescott, does he get his first Turkey Day win as a Dallas Cowboy? I would like to think so.
I would think so. I mean, the Redskins aren't bad, but they're not real good either.
I mean, I would say a C-level NFL team right now.
Yeah.
And then the later game, of course.
Pittsburgh at Indianapolis. Both of them, they have great quarterbacks, but not a whole lot else, honestly. Both of their defenses suck.
I'm really curious to see, I think, it would not surprise me if both quarterbacks if Roethlisberger and Luck end up throwing 4 touchdowns each.
Right.
It also wouldn't surprise me if, because of the lack of talent around those guys, if this thing finishes up 7-6.
Yeah.
I don't think this is going to be a mid scoring it, right? It's either going to be 41-44 or it's going to be 7-6.
Yeah.
So an interesting one there. And then again, of course, on Friday, moving into that Florida State game. And then, as you mentioned, the big game for us that we want to kind of round out with, the Iron Bowl. This year it's in Tuscaloosa. What do you look forward to seeing out of the Auburn Tigers? With the season that Auburn has had, the transition between, oh my God, after the start of the year, to, hey, we're putting some stuff together, to last week, the Georgia performance. As an Auburn fan, what do you want to see? To you, other than obviously a win at the end of the game, would you consider a good outing and a good performance for the Auburn Tigers?
I don't know that. I mean, honestly, man, I don't think it's really a fair comparison because they're so banged up. I mean, we knew they were really thin. It was pretty obvious about the Ole Miss game or so that they were really thin, and that they really couldn't afford and injury, let alone two, to to their backfield. So I mean, I want to see them come out and play a good game. If the defense can force a couple or 3 or 4 turnovers, maybe we can stay in the game. But honestly, man, I mean, I'm not real optimistic about getting a win here. But I want to see them come out and play hard, which I don't have any reason to doubt that they'll do that. But yeah, I mean, I don't see any way that we can come out with a win. But that's I'll still watch the game and have fun, drink a lot of beer, obviously.
that's called the coping mechanism.
Right, yeah.
I think excuse me. I think for the Crimson Tide, looking to finish out the year, to have that undefeated season, to finish out with a win over the in-state rival is a big deal. Game being in Tuscaloosa, I'm going to look for that to be. I don't know that they've announced a game time yet,
it's
but
2:30.
It is going to be the CBS
kickoff.
game.
Yeah.
Jesus. You mean to tell me that we've got to watch another 8-hour game on CBS with Vern and Gary?
Oh, yeah. With it being the Iron
Jesus.
Bowl, it's the only one that's going to be on at the time. Oh, it's going to be good.
Oh, God.
6:30, 7 o'clock at least. Yeah.
So, all right. So if you're wondering, first of all, our advice is go ahead and make sure you start the game already in your pajamas with your sleeping bag and pillow,
Yeah.
so that when the game's over at midnight, you can just go on and go to sleep. But, no, I mean, excuse me, goodness. After the way Jalen Hurts has played this year, I really look forward to seeing him, hopefully having a good outing. I mean, again, he's looked good in some big games so far this year, being the first, quarterback to throw for 300 and rush for 100, for the Crimson Tide. I mean, I think, the kid's proven that he's got a lot of maturity for his age, and I love the fact that even in games that they're winning and they're up, he's still getting coached up on the sideline. I mean, I'm really excited to see what we do. I also look forward to really seeing some depth out of the Alabama backfield. I'd really like to see us go 3 and 4 deep at the running back position in the Iron Bowl. I think we've got, a pretty phenomenal defense this year. We've gotten more defensive points off defensive turnovers. I think than still anybody else in the country, at least that I'm thinking of in FBS. We did a good job bouncing back after starting safety. We had a serious injury there with Jackson breaking his leg. We recovered nicely, gave up a couple of passing plays in the Mississippi State game. But, for the Auburn Tigers, the one thing that they've done well every game this year is they get after a quarterback.
Yeah, they do. They can do that.
And I really look forward to seeing how mature Jalen Hurts really is in dealing with the pressure.
Yeah, I was going to say that's going to be the best defense he's played all year. I mean, they've got what's thought to be 2 first-round picks on the defensive line with Montravius Adams and Carl Lawson. Honestly, the Alabama offensive line has not played up to what they were thought to be, I guess. So
no, especially out of the left tackle, Cam Robinson.
Yeah, I know.
I mean,
that's, which
guys,
is surprising.
It's supposed to be an early to mid-round, first-round draft pick, and the guy.
He's stunk it up.
I mean, look, I want to be very clear. He's clearly way better than I'll ever be at offensive line.
Sure,
but at the same time, you're right. I mean, just you look at last year's performance, and this guy's, looking at preseason All-American award, all of these type of recognition and honors, and then this year it's just like, dude, just block one person. At some point today, block one person is all we need.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit frustrating, but I look forward to. I don't know if you saw the hype video that got released by Alabama for today's game against Chattanooga.
I saw you posted it on Facebook, but I haven't gotten a chance to watch it.
Pretty entertaining. I think again it really alludes to the fact that hey, we've got a lot of talent on the defensive side of the ball, but again, I look for the offense to do some things, and I think it's going to be a great way to close out the year, get ready to go to Atlanta. And again, I mean, I look to see a really good game. I love nothing more than when Auburn and Alabama are fighting it out into the fourth quarter.
And I mean, last year, Alabama was far more superior to Auburn a year ago than they are right now, I guess. I mean, you still saw. I mean, Auburn was in the game for 4 quarters, man. I mean, you just never know what's going to happen in that game. But another thing I just want to touch on just real quick is the basketball teams for Auburn and Alabama. Both of them look to be drastically improved over what they have been in the past couple of years. You got 2 second-year head coach, Pearl's a third-year head coach there. But But yeah, I mean, there's going to be dramatic improvement over what they had been under their previous coaches, both of them. So just if you get a chance, just check both of them out.
Yeah, I was pretty excited to see Alabama actually hang with Dayton.
Yeah.
Well into the really up until about the last 2.5 minutes of that game. So completely agree. I mean, I know Auburn needs some skill and some wins coming out of the Auburn basketball program after dropping $93 million on a new arena.
Absolutely.
Beautiful arena, by the way.
They've got 3 just superstar freshmen that are starting for them. So for no other reason, you might get to see a couple of future first round draft picks in the NBA when you watch the Auburn Tigers basketball team play. So
learn from it, Alabama. Destroy Coleman Coliseum, please, dear God, build something.
That's really. I mean, you got to spend the money, man, to pull in those big time guys.
Does the University of Alabama have any money revenue right now? Hint, hint.
Yeah.
Maybe upgrade the facility a little bit, guys.
Right.
But yeah, no, I mean, you're exactly right. Should be a much better basketball season for Alabama and Auburn both.
Yeah,
so.
And also for the 2017 class, how about this? They both finished in the top 5 in recruiting. I don't think that's ever happened before.
Wow, I cannot remember it ever happening for Alabama. So.
Yeah. But anyway, you got anything else you want to add?
No, man. Just want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. Travel safe. Have some good food. Have some good libations. As always, I'll finish with a Roll Tide.
And more Eagle.